I asked my professor, like, oh, what do you want me to bring to this lab? Like, should I take this course? Should I do this training program, this boot camp? And he's like, hey, almost like, honey, don't worry kind of thing. Like, as long as he said three things, like, you're passionate, you're diligent, and you're not doing that thing where you nod, even though you're not understanding what I'm saying. Like, I want you. I am Barkotel Zememu. I am a member of the 2024 cohort and a rising second-year student doing a PhD in physics. I imagine a world where the mysteries of the physical universe are mysteries, not just to those who are detectives, but also to those who are not.
Welcome to the Imagine a World podcast from Knight-Hennessy Scholars. We are here to give you a glimpse into the Knight-Hennessy scholar community of graduate students spanning all 7 Stanford schools, including business, education, engineering, humanities, law, medicine, and sustainability. In each episode, we talk with scholars about the world they imagine and what they are doing to bring it to life.
Welcome to another Imagine a World podcast. Today's special guest is Barkotel Zememu, a PhD student in physics from the 2024 cohort. Now, we are going to hear a lot about physics today. We're going to hear about what dark matter is, the history of famous physicists, and what that means for the field of science. But one thing that I know, even personally, from my time with Barkotel, we're in the same cohort, is that Barkotel thinks so deeply about every aspect of life. So we're going to talk a lot about that here today as well, about friends and people you travel through life with, and the ways that you can write it all down in a journal so you don't forget years later. You're not going to want to miss this episode of Imagine a World. Please stay with us. Hi everyone, welcome to Imagine a World. This is Max Du. I am a 2024 cohort Knight-Hennessy scholar and also a rising second-year PhD in computer science. And I'm here with Barkotel. Before we talk about the world you imagine, let's talk about the world that you were born into. Where are you from and what was your journey like here?
Yeah, I am born and raised in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Lived there for pretty much 2 decades. The first time I set foot in the US was for college, which is somewhat of an ambiguous statement. I didn't say the first time I set foot in the US was to begin college, but it was for a college summer program. I did it at Yale in my 11th grade summer. That was the first time I was exposed to the world outside of Ethiopia. That was the first time I ever hopped on an international flight. That was a time that I really improved my English in a lot of ways. But yeah, after that summer, I was pretty much brainwashed to apply to Yale for undergrad, and I got in early, and I think that kind of set the trajectory of my college career and beyond. I applied to Yale as a history major, and then thought of applied math, and then thought of philosophy, and at some point just settled into physics. But physics became more of a hobby, and I started dabbling in a number of other courses, a lot of language courses, a lot of humanities courses. But I still enjoyed physics research as that I applied for grad school, and now we're here.
I want to go back to when this was 11th grade summer, right? And you decided to come to the US for the first time. What was that like? What was it like stepping off that plane for the first time?
The number one thing I wanted to make sure was, have they portrayed America in the movies correctly? I landed in the US, in DC. My family was living in Virginia. And I remember just looking at those suburbs and I'm like, OMG, like this is exactly like in the movies. It's so pristine. It feels very like, it's a country already like well done, ready made. Like there's a lot of talk about like developing countries in the most literal sense of the world, like back home, like you see development on the go, and then you come here and you see what's on the other side of the development. Like this is just a finished country. So yeah, I think I just populated my iPhone photo gallery, like just pretty much like probably 20, 30 pictures every day. I just like take random pictures by the bridge. Like I see a deer, I see like a 2-story building, I see like a villa, I see a bunch of people like by the pool and fountains. Like it's just a lot of excitement. It's like a very childlike wonder of like, oh my gosh, I'm visiting. I just like send a bunch of pictures back home. But yeah, at some point just get used to it. I think it was an international summer program, the YYGS, Yale Young Global Scholars at Yale. You don't feel almost singled out for feeling or being non-American because like 50% of the cohort is international. But yeah, you also just recognize that there's a whole world outside of Ethiopia, outside of what you grew up in. And like, you become so proud of how you were raised and like the background and the story that you bring, but also like, you can no longer grow limited. Like, I had a classification of the world. Like, there's two types of people in the world, or there's two parts of the world. Like, there's Ethiopia and there's non-Ethiopia. There's like Ethiopians and non-Ethiopians. It's like, again, when you grow back home, like this naivety is just lost on you. And you come here and you just like, just engage with people who've had so many different aspirations and desires and way of speaking, and the things that make them smile or laugh, like, are things that don't make me smile or laugh, which is like is so not funny. Or like the things that I find like so amusing, or like there's like an inside joke that I don't even have to explain. Is like stuff that requires a lot of explanation for them.
Give examples. I'm so curious. Is there something that you remember? Is there something hilarious or some inside joke that just sticks out to you? Sometimes that happens.
This is less of an inside joke and more of an incident. Like walking to a supermarket, and Americans are very like, this is my initial feeling, like they're very friendly. Like wallet drops down like at the supermarket, and if someone sees it, they'll be like, oh, I'll get it. Like they like bend down and like try to get it for you, right? But the moment someone says like, I'll get it, like you feel like they're gonna steal it. Like when I'm like from back home, like that's mine, like just like, and then like reaching out for the wallet they're gonna like pick up and give to you. But for you, it's like they're trampling on your spaces. And that was one incident where I was like, there's just a lot of subtleties of language that you have to learn when you come to a new world.
So this actually happened to you.
Yeah.
And how did this person react when you did it?
There was a mutual understanding. I think it was very clear. Like it comes, like the realization settles in very quickly, right? Yeah.
How did you feel afterwards?
It was a bit embarrassing because like a very similar story happened to my uncle in Virginia, and he told us a very similar story, and I'm like, yeah, it did resonate a lot. It was a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, it's so interesting how like, yeah, as you were saying, language is so subtle.
It is very subtle. And that's where I learned of like, even though I said 11th grade summer was the time when my English got sharpened a lot, it's not that I didn't know English or that I didn't know the grammar rules or even ways of saying based on watching movies and so on, but there's just a lot of subtleties in which you default for that to be your way of thinking.
Are there other examples of subtleties or cultural differences? Because I know you were saying there's like Ethiopia in your head and there's like non-Ethiopia. And I'm just so interested in like seeing how that junction played out for you, you know, in your first summer and beyond.
Like saying goodbye. In Ethiopia, you say goodbye like multiple times. It is a very interesting phenomena. Like if guests are visiting over and they're about to leave, like they get up, they hug everyone, like goodbye, like your aunt, mom, dad, everyone. And then like say if some conversation starts, like, okay, like just at the final moment, they start that conversation and then they repeat the whole like goodbye process all over again. And then they go to the gate and they just like turn around and like do the whole waving thing. And then you have to come out and like make sure that they have a warm, not just welcome, but a warm goodbye. So you stand on the door and like wave. And this is not something I noticed back home. But after I came to the US and returned and I noticed the same thing, I'm like, I remember saying like, wow, like this feels like such a waste of time. Like I already said bye to you. Like, why are you repeating it to me? But then I remembered having this conversation with my dad, and yeah, I think he just recognized that I was now suddenly exposed to a new world. And now there's this like almost reverse culture shock where like it was a very patient process of attuning myself and him helping me attune myself to this old new world where I was like, yeah, there's accepting it just the way it was. Like there's just this warmth that was desired, and like you just want to make sure people feel loved all the way through. But then in the US, like initially I felt everyone was so cold. Like we had a really lovely conversation over dinner, and I'm like, yeah, like at the end people are like, okay, bye, see you. And like they just leave. And for me that's very cold. Like, see you later. I'm like, just like that? Like there's no like transition into a goodbye phase. And for them it's like, just we're done, right? Have something next. So that's something I noticed.
So you're someone who wants a long goodbye. You want to have a good relationship when you're meeting someone, and you want that to be reflected in how they say goodbye.
Here's the thing. I've grown very flexible / adaptable. So it's a lot less of I want it. It's a lot more like I notice that difference. And I have found myself being able to straddle these different worlds where, yeah, as in Rome, do as Romans do kind of tendency.
So when you straddle, do you pick one or the other, or have you found a way to mix them together?
I pick one or the other. When I am back home, I pick that. When I'm here, I pick this. Yeah, it feels a lot less a cognitive dissonance the more you recognize it, the more you're aware of it.
The more you see it and the more you decide, oh, like in this situation, I want to act this way. Have you ever done an extended goodbye or used other parts of your life back at home here in the US?
Here's another thing. Another Ethiopian in KH was sharing at one of the storytellings of how it's second nature for us to share. Like you get some chocolates or you get some treats and like your first thing is not to open it and ingest it. Your first thing is like, oh, I can't wait till I get home and share it with my sister or with mom or anything.
This is in Ethiopia?
This is back home, yeah. I also have to preface this like immediately by saying like it's a country of 125 million people. I grew up in the capital city, grew up not super exposed to everyone in the capital city. So somewhat like a Ethiopia with an asterisk, right? My Ethiopian upbringing with my family.
Well, it's your experience.
Exactly. But there was just that sense of like, I want to share with someone. Like you get a chewing gum, like, you don't swallow like I never swallowed the whole thing. It's like, I cut it into two and I like give it to my sister. It's like, it's a way of saying like, we're eating from the same source, but just like, it's shared. And it's kind of, yeah, like I remember taking out like one time, like my friend asked me like, oh, Barku, like, do you have a gum? And I'm like, I take it out and I just cut it into two and I give it to him. And he's like, wait, what the heck? And I was like, oh, sorry. I just give him the whole thing. These kind of subtleties. I'm sure more examples would come into my mind. I'm not the most satisfied with the examples I gave you so far, but I'm sure more would.
But I'm getting the picture of it. It's like, from what I understand, it's almost like the place you come from is very community oriented.
It is community.
There's like, you get something cool. You're like, oh, I can't wait to share this with family, with other people. Whereas, it does feel like in the US, it's very much like, be yourself, do the cool things that you will do, but it's always so focused on the individual.
Yeah. Another thing I learned in the US though is the V word. Like vulnerability. That was a very strange concept to me. Initially, the whole concept of grabbing meals. Maybe that's a very college thing and you don't notice it in high school, but hey, like, let's grab a meal. Like, are you free next Thursday? It's like, I remember coming here and I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, so eat and talk. Like, it felt, I don't want to say a time waster, but it felt like it was going to interrupt my momentum throughout the day. If I'm going to quote unquote grab a meal with you, like lunchtime, like, so between classes, like I'm going to be distracted and then I try to go back to my studies afterwards. Like, 'cause I did have a very like, not workaholic mindset, but work comes first mindset in college. And this desire to just get to know people just for the sake of it, like make friends just for the sake of the friend themselves and quote unquote do life together was a very foreign thing that I had to grow, like to learn to, because even sitting down across someone on a dining table and just like go deep immediately as opposed to warm up slowly, right? Like just like, ask the basic questions. And again, there are people who did that, but there are people who just wanted to know like, yeah, like what's been heavy in your heart this past week, or what's been the most exciting and the most difficult part of the past like 3 months. And I'm like, what do you want this answer to be? Like, do you want me to spill over all my authentic self? But then after this conversation, you're never going to see me again. So like you carry a part of me with you that you're never going to follow up with. Or are you genuinely interested in this question? Or are you asking this to everyone and you're just interviewing me? Or is this genuine desire to get to know me? And if I ask you the same question, am I actually going to get to know you? Or have you just a rehearsed answer at the back of your head? So that was something that the meal culture or just getting to know people, sitting with people taught me in college in the US. I never really experienced that back in high school, back home. Maybe it's because it was the nature of the high school or the home. That's a new practice I brought into, or a new me I brought into Denning House, for instance. Like I think my Denning House lunch interactions would have been very different with that old mindset. I would have come here, got my lunch, sat down, just listened to people and like, just like gave like a bunch of shallow answers and left, as opposed to just allowing room for depth, for going deeper, for poking and allowing others to poke me.
So you discovered depth when you came here?
I would say so, yeah. Again, discover is not it's a tricky word, but I'll stick with that word. Yeah,
you
depth.
Like unlocked it, or you found a gear in you that didn't exist. A joy in it.
Yeah.
You felt happy when someone asked you that for the first time, or were you confused?
It took some time to develop trust that this was something that lasts. Like, I think there's this desire for like longevity and friendships and connections. Like, no one really wants inauthentic, deep questions. Like, fine, it's deep, but if it's just rehearsed, if it's just like part of your vocabulary and you're, at the end of the day, after someone shares, all you're going to do is do like, yeah, I get it. And just like move on to talking about yourself or other things and just not follow up, then that very implicitly, subtly violates the trust of like, hey, I thought you cared. I thought you wanted more. I thought you wanted to go deeper and explore. So I think that took time. That took Like I think from sophomore year to senior year, like there's just a lot of friends I grew to just experience the highest of highs and lowest of lows in their lives and they and mine. And that was the privilege of doing life together, of just experiencing someone and just in all of their shape and form. And it's just at the end of the day, it's not about, hey, let's catch up or hey, let's keep in touch after graduation. It's like, you don't even have to say that. Like you've settled into that rhythm. So yeah, I would just say it took time.
And it's about showing up with your imperfections and everything that is not cool and just sitting down and being like, I hear you,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And we're going through that together. And it's like the flip side of that is like, as you're saying, people who ask these deep questions, but they're not really deep. They're just there to do it because they rehearsed it, because they want to turn it to themselves. I agree. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. This is the nature of like, partly the nature of like an emotional intelligence or social intelligence in conversations. Like you want to adopt somewhat of a meta perspective during a conversation, not just like, okay, I have this 1 p.m. slot. I have to make sure like this lunch happens or this dinner happens and I leave kind of thing. And like, it's the concept of like almost sonder. Like sonder is like this state of mind where like when you're just walking around and you notice people and like, oh my gosh, like these people have their own lives. Like they have their own stories just like I do. Like they're like there's a soul behind it. Like that realization. But you can also have that sonder state in a one-on-one conversation. Like, yeah, I'm bringing myself into this conversation, but so is this person. And like, you can't force that. Like, just that you can't force yourself into sleeping. Like, the more you try to like, okay, I have to sleep, like, the less likely you're about to sleep. But maybe some people might say I can do that. But I have a hard time doing that. It's one of those things like sneezing. Like, if I try to sneeze, I can't. This is my problem.
It's about letting go.
Yeah, you just let go. Just lose yourself into it. The more you try to analyze it, the more you lose the beauty of it. Like, just go to like Yosemite or like Yellowstone and like, or Grand Canyon. And the more you try to like analyze it from a very scientific way of like, oh, how do the layers form? And like, oh, this angle and that angle, like you lose that beauty of it. But the more you just lose yourself in the majesty and the grandeur, like, wow, I'm grasped by it. It's not that I'm grasping it.
Because yes, you're grasped by it because there's something about beauty and other people that is impossible to explain intellectually.
Yeah.
But you feel it deep inside.
Exactly. Exactly. It's that quote by Blaise Pascal that I love. Like, the heart has its reasons that reason does not understand. And you can use this answer as a cop-out for everything. Like, oh, why did you do it? Like, oh, the heart has its reasons, the reason does not understand. Like, it's not a sustainable way of living. But deep down, like, there's certain decisions you make, like when it comes to aspects of, say, relationships or beauty or just impersonal parts of life or immaterial aspects of life and like person-heavy aspects of life, where deep down you just know it. Where no goes with that asterisk of like, don't ask me exactly the reasons.
It's like, don't ask because I can't explain it.
Yeah.
You see someone from across and you're like, I think we're going to be great friends.
Yeah.
And you just feel it and you know it and you can't explain it.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
It's really,
but it's like you have to let go because you might also have that cognizant side of like, I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that. Or like, oh, look at how the layers on like the Grand Canyon are forming.
Exactly.
But then you also have another voice that's like, just enjoy the moment.
For sure. Totally.
That's really beautiful. And it's like, that's your discovering of vulnerability. It's also being vulnerable with yourself.
I think that's my KH improbable facts. My number one was like, I've been journaling pretty much every day since like sophomore year of college or first year of college. And that was an aspect of being vulnerable with myself. I first picked up journaling like 2013 when I was like 11, 12. But like following my own train of thought, but also not just train of thought, but train of feelings, of like emotions and seeing how they, like why I was actually feeling this way and like going deeper and chasing it while writing. Like sometimes it felt weird. Sometimes like I'm like, initially I started in 2013 when I was 12 because I thought I was going to be famous and everyone would be interested in reading my childhood. And like I recounted my stories and like what happened.
The mighty Barkotel is beginnings. No, we were all like that as kids. Like, I was like that.
I wish I couldn't acknowledge that, but I can't help it. Like there's just, when I opened my journal, I started from May 11, 2002, which is my birthday. I don't know if this is TMI to say on a public podcast, but
how did you start your journal on your birthday?
So I started recording them. Like I asked my parents what happened the day I was born. So the sources for this come from like my parents. But yeah, when I was born, like mom was at the hospital and dad was rushing from the office, and this was how Barku came into the world. And then I just walked through everything, but that was more of a narrative part. And I really still can't get how I was feeling as an 11-year-old.
Because you were a journalist to your own life.
Exactly. I was a journalist. But then I think college, I was more of it became a way of if you just pressed your ears into my heart, that's how you'd hear. That's the impression you get from my journal. I didn't really hesitate to put that on my improbable facts of K8 because for me that was the most improbable thing that could have happened to high school Barkotel, where I had already stopped journaling by high school. I was very academic focused. I had a very regimented approach to life. Even first year of me, I was just rushing through classes, through extracurriculars, didn't never want to interrupt my momentum, wanted to go deep, but academically, intellectually deep. But yeah, that was just that softy part of me that I'm really grateful it came out. It made writing the K8 essay really easy because I just had to go back to my journals and piece a few sentences and just create some thread.
And it's so funny you say that because I was literally the exact same. In high school, I was just so technically motivated.
Yeah.
But in college, I found that side of me. And I'm very curious about, how did you change? Because a lot of people just live their whole lives being technically oriented and they never discover that part of themselves.
Every time a how question is raised, there's always, you think of what's the best way to approach this?
When was the first time that you started writing and you're I feel my heart on that page?
So that's one approach to do it. When someone poses a how question, I go back to the first time. But is it the first time that's really significant? Or is it how it built up through time and all the people that influenced it? Or is it more even the underlying how of the how, how I really came to value that? Is that what matters?
You're making it almost like a technical question.
Yeah.
It's almost how do we even understand such a big shift in your life?
That's the tricky part of biographers. They try to reflect on someone else's life and how they changed. I was reading this book by Abraham Pais about Einstein's life. How did he came to embrace this or not embrace that? And it's really hard to make that, not just from a third person point of view, but even if Einstein was writing an autobiography, I don't quite know how he would unpack that. But let me attempt to. People had a huge role in that journey. I think my first year, I still sporadically tried to journal. I still had that desire, but it was this one friend who journaled on Google Sheets. And he showed me, he was a year above me, but he showed me, opened his Google Sheets and scrolled through different dates. And he's easily September 22. And he was doing this with I just felt so much awe at that time because it was my first year. And I just could imagine myself as a senior looking back at all my college journey and say wow, I feel so lucky that I know this information as a first year because I could start it right now. So I decided to do Google Docs at the time. And then at some point, and then every night I started pretty much journaling, and at some point it got tiring to just type it out. So I went to speech to text. So I just every time before bed, I more mumble as opposed to journal. But it really helped me be expressive. There was no one in the room. I always had a single in college. So I was not disturbing anyone, but just that started my ability to just reflect on the day and somehow capture parts of the day that I didn't want to miss down the road. And then at some point, I switched to the iPhone journal app. But it just became a lot less of where I was doing it and how I was doing it, but why I was doing it. Initially, I was really just interested in capturing my day. And I'm I don't want this day, just June 24, 2020 to be forgotten. But later on, it became it's not about what happened through the day, but how I was just developing as a person, how I felt at this lunch. Fine, if I go through my iPhone gallery, I'll probably see a picture that I had, a get-together that we went to Six Flags. But what was I feeling when we were on on that trip? How did I feel on the journey back? And those are things that those pictures can't capture, or even simply writing in my journal, oh, I went with so-and-so and so-and-so, can't capture. So there was that aspect of it on the one hand. But on the other hand, just those friends who stayed, I think that's a very important part of my college story. It wasn't a bunch of transient friendships or just surface level. Just when you meet up, it's hey, we should catch up. And 3 months later, someone texts always, oh my gosh, I saw you. Sorry for your text. Kind of just distant kind of acquaintances, third-degree friends, those are still valuable. You have your own lives. You can't want that or you can't have that with everyone. But there were people who just they never asked for my presence. I never asked for their presence, but we were just present in each other's lives. At some point, it became a lot less of a request. It became a lot more of just a fact of reality that we were not just going to let go of one another. And what I saw in those friends, really almost internally converted me. This is actually part of my K8 essay. This way of living just felt infinitely more valuable. It felt like this antidote to the self-consumed lifestyle. Like a brand new script where the lead role is just not yours. It's shared. Like you're not, it's not your stage. Like you share it with others. But then a pivot that I wrote about in my KH essay too was Easter Sunday service in my sophomore year, which was titled, "What is Love?" And the speaker dared to offer a very pithy response to that question. And I remember scribbling down in my journal, like, love is simply a fundamental other-centeredness, that at the depth of my being, like I am thinking about the person next to me as much as I am thinking about myself. And that just really rocked me. Like, even though on a more intellectual level, I would call it like, oh, aesthetically beautiful, fine, that makes sense, okay. Like, I can even try to justify it, like culturally, like, yeah, I've seen people live that way back home, and yeah, that's a good way to live. Like deep down, I don't know if I had internalized that, practiced that. So that was a pivot. But again, when you ask me, how did you change? Like if I just mentioned that, that's only part of the story. That's not the whole story. So just one step on the stairs that led me here. And it's the stair that's still going on. It's not, I'm not pretending to have already gotten there. But it was just a series of those one-time events and extended events that just grew in me this new personality, a new dimension of approaching the world.
It sounds like you learned how to love yourself too. Mm. If you're looking at otherness, and if you're looking at yourself almost as a different entity, you're like, how did I feel today? You know, who was I today?
Yeah.
And you're like recording it down for your later self.
Yeah.
It's almost another degree of love. It's an otherness that's also kind of weirdly centered on yourself. Exactly.
Because that's a knee-jerk reaction you can have to other-centeredness. Oh, so am I going to be a doormat? Like, not quite.
No,
like,
you don't have to be.
Yeah.
You know, you can be your full self and also care deeply about other people.
Yeah.
You know, this is concept, if you know of like a ride or die. It's like if you find the right friends in your life, you know, it's like you feel like any sort of crap you deal with in your life is shared.
Yeah.
And all the beauty is shared and everything. It's like it makes life a lot less burdensome.
Yeah.
Because you're walking through it together.
Yes. They and mine and them. Yeah. And it's liberating.
It sounds like you found a really amazing group of people in your undergrad.
I did, and it just becomes not, quote unquote, an undergrad thing. For some of them who graduated afterwards, like still, I don't want to say the word keep in touch, as if like it's just touching once in a while.
Yeah, it feels wrong, right?
Yeah, it feels wrong.
It's just, more than that.
It's more than that.
What is that like
still
for
present. I think this is one of the fullest ways you can approach reality and like the world as we live in. Like it's not the only way, I think. You can talk about this later, but there's the physical universe aspect of this reality that's also just so beautiful and touching, but it feels very incomplete. Like, especially in my physics journey, I can say that. Like, it feels very incomplete without this human endeavor and those that you do it alongside with. Like, yeah, fine. Like, I think as an article of faith, I can say the physical universe out there would exist independent of my imaginations and our pursuit and our relationships. But like, the pursuit of it becomes so much richer when it's supplemented or goes alongside and parallel with this also just equally rich interpersonal life.
Yeah, it's like there's the world we're in. It's made of atoms, and we're humans and we're biological.
Yeah.
But it's somehow the fact that we're living, the fact that we can exist with other people, just makes that whole world so much more colorful.
That's why you can have a lot of instances of science gone wrong. You can also have a lot of instances of a non-scientific way of life gone wrong. But by non-scientific, I would quickly like put an asterisk and say like it's not saying like anti-science, more like just a part of life that can't be broken down or analyzed by science, like relationships or like those like the artsy part of life. That could also go wrong when you miss the other component of it, when you're like, oh, all I care about is feeling and emotions and what's underlying it, and you don't really quite care about investigating it, like, okay, from a logical or rational or like scientific point of view, though, like at least somehow try to ground this and justify this. You lose a lot if you ignore that scientific aspect of it. Also, when you approach science and like do like look at the universe and think of the puniness of this earth, or maybe the majesty of this earth, and how like it's just particularly habitable and like particularly just a result of so much luck. You could phrase it that way. But if that's the only place that you stop, you just miss a component of reality that just like, yeah, it's not that you're wrong. It's just incomplete. It feels very incomplete.
So what you're saying is like for people who look at the earth and are just in confusion of how lucky they are, what would you say to them?
I think my concern is not that this awesome realization of like, wow, look at the series of pretty much unexpected, I don't want to say random, but like a lot of open steps that we're taking. Open in the sense of like it could have gone different ways. Open steps that got us here. That's almost a fact, right? That's pretty much a fact. But it's that like it's purely fixating on that and forgetting the end product of that, like where we are right now and what we have right now, and just focusing on the process that, in a sense, you want to just label as like open or random or just like thoughtless. And then you just forget like it's a thoughtful creature at the end of that thoughtless process that's making these realizations, and you're surrounded by other thoughtful creatures. And if that aspect is missing, it's just like, it's not wrong, it's just incomplete. Like, how about we try to fit the other piece together? Fine. Initially, it doesn't seem that you fit, like a thoughtful creature with a thoughtless process, but maybe there's more to the story. There's more excitement and there's doom of just looking at this world and say like, oh, everything is pointless. Or there's a more tempered way of approaching this world by saying like, oh, we're the center of everything. Like, look at us thoughtful creature. Like, it's uncomfortable from someone who just, if I just want like a quick, like easy answer to like, what is the point of it all? It humbles you when you recognize, oh, there's so much puniness in my tiny little puny mind.
And yet it's so large for you.
It is.
As someone who experiences and feels so deeply, you know? And it's like at some point, it's like it doesn't matter how rare it was, but that it matters that it's happening right now.
Yeah.
That we're living and we're somehow just breathing and alive and experiencing, you know? But that's something I'm so curious about for you, because you're very technical. You're doing your PhD in physics. And yet in our conversation right now, you have the mind of a writer as well. And I'm just so curious about how your journey has been like with those two worlds. You know, you kind of think deeply in all aspects of it.
Again, I remind you, the physics came after a lot of wrestling in college, after applying as like a double major in history and applied math, and then wanting to do like philosophy, physics, linguistics, and then suddenly just, it feels something I just could not let go of, the physics aspect of it, because it just fit reality, or I should say physical reality at its most naked, at its barest, at its core. And there's just something so like intellectually seductive about that. It's more of like a hobby at this point. It feels like, yeah, I don't consider my 9 to 5 as a job. Like, it feels something I can do and think about. And like, even sometimes like this complaint of like, oh, I go home and like I can't stop thinking about work. For me, like, yeah, I can't stop thinking about it, because like there's something that tickled about me. Again, it's not like the fact that I have to get the slides prepared or this poster done or this graph for the next meeting. Those things, like I'd rather like not have to think about them after work hours. But that excitement that it engenders about like this big picture, when you zoom out, like sometimes you look at a picture like at a museum, like you can go to like a museum, like you look at a piece of art very closely, but then you take a few steps back and you're like, dang, this picture, like she's really cute. Like I have no idea what the artist was thinking of, but it's not just the tiny part that I was focusing on. And same thing for me. Like I think the more I zoom out from my research and I think of, maybe it would help to give more details of what I work on. It's like broadly, it's dark matter. Like what is dark matter? How can we find it? How can we detect it? How can we verify its existence? And it's a field that lies at the intersection of astronomy, of particle physics, of these days of a lot of like quantum technology. Even it could venture into species like atomic physics. It definitely does venture into those species.
So before we go there, for listeners who aren't as familiar with dark matter, including me, what is dark matter?
This is why I love studying history, because I could just give you what it is, like a definition, and not really enlighten you why it's actually called dark. But then the attempt to tell you like why it's called dark is like, sometimes there's not even much reason, except for the fact that it's non-luminous. It doesn't emit light. Okay, let me attempt a definition. It's not even a definition, just one aspect of approaching it. Dark matter is this component of this universe that shows us its existence gravitationally through its attraction, i.e. it's matter, it's not radiation, but it doesn't emit light, or it doesn't interact with light, which is why we call it dark. Some comments here, like stars, they're matter, okay? They're actually made out of atoms and, you know, the protons and the neutrons and whatever constitutes of that, quarks deep inside. But at the same time, they also emit light. They also interact with the electromagnetic part of physics, in which sense, like, we can actually detect them. Our instruments can actually verify their presence, not just through their gravitational pull, not just through hug and pull this tug of war with each other, but also what they emit. But dark matter, it only manifests itself through, for instance, how it speeds up other galactic bodies or other stars, or how it distorts space-time, i.e. how it just says like, because I am here and because I have mass, I can actually change the fabric of space-time. This is only something that matter can do. But yeah, at the end of the day, if I can just boil it down, it's like, yeah, dark matter, just this non-luminous, non-radiating, gravitationally present something out there.
So it sounds like it's something defined almost like in terms of what's lacking.
It is, but there's also something that's so present. Two things on that. Number one, it forms like pretty much 85% of the universe, almost like a 1-to-5 ratio for every matter part, like a luminous matter particle, like a what we call like a non-dark matter. There's this 5 times more abundant as far as its density is concerned. So in that sense, it's very present. It's very not lacking. Another sense in which very present is that, like, yeah, its influence on the way galaxies form, on how they form, it's on the influence on the underlying structure of the universe. It's very pronounced. What is lacking is, if you ask me, like, so what is it made of? And how much does it weigh? Like, how much do the constituent particles of dark matter, if it's actually particles, how much do they weigh? And how do we detect them? And how do we verify them? Or is it like, perhaps the way you're approaching like gravity, perhaps that's wrong. Like, perhaps you have to modify like this old Newtonian way of looking at the world, or even this Einstein way of looking at the world. Like, perhaps that's the problem, and you don't have to invent this new thing out there. Like, if you keep adding these questions, then it becomes a lot more complicated, and you see what's lacking is additional evidence to provide an answer to this question. Like, I could volunteer some answers to these questions, but I don't quite know how to back them up. And that's what a lot of experiments around the world are trying to do. That's what my research group is currently trying to do, like participating in one experiment that attempts to address this particular flavor of this question. But yeah, and the more you get deeper into it, it gets technical, and it's just easy to miss the grand beauty of it, like this almost philosophical / epistemological aspect of it. Like, if you ask me a Barkotel, like, how do you know that dark matter exists? Like, my answer evolves. Like, initially, it would be totally fair to say, I trust my advisor, or I trust these papers that I read. It starts being based on some level of trust, but not entirely on that. Like, fine, I kind of know how these equations are derived. I kind of remember them from my undergrad class. But then you can ask me, like, oh, but how do you know those equations are real? Like, because I'm sorry, but you're telling me like this is something like 85% of the universe, like extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Like, what is your evidence? And initially it's just like, it's almost a statement of like, I trust it. So I go deeper into it. It's not like I enter it. It's not like anyone enters it with full confidence, knowing like A to Z what the evidence line is, but you grow deeper and deeper into the realization of it. And like, you start reading more. And as I said, like, it's the intersection of many different fields. So an astronomer might not know everything that the particle physicists say about dark matter, vice versa. A condensed matter physicist might not know this historical motivation of it, but probably definitely know very well how to experimentally detect it in a particular way. And this different like synergy of different fields, like, it stops becoming a buzzword, and like, you recognize it actually making the fabric of your field. Actually working on the day-to-day aspects of the lab is also very stimulating, because you see there are tiny contributions at some point stop becoming tiny, because you recognize, okay, this experiment would not work without this particular contribution. And the more you add your own flair to your contribution, you're like, yeah, this experiment would not work without this particular flair, because I was the one who provided this particular flair. But it becomes a lot less of a me thing, a lot less of an individual thing. It's like, it's an us thing. Physics is not one of those things you can do alone.
I mean, that reminds me of just so much of stuff we talked about before, of like, you're finding love in science. Yeah. You're finding it in other people, and you're realizing almost the same way that you're finding out in other friendships that like in science, all the past works matter.
Yeah.
You know, you're defined in terms of everything else.
Yeah. And that is partly what I think I get asked a lot of, this history to physics pivot. And that formed a core part of that. Like, just seeing how I was really into 18th and 19th century biographies. I just wanted a personal dimension to how they approached their work. So I was so much into reading their diaries and letters to their friends and to their partners. And I'm like, wow, there's so much life this scientific endeavor brings to their existence, but there's so much life their other part of their existence brings to their science. Like, the way they approach their work, it's so much infused with this deeper realization of beauty. Like, I think James Clerk Maxwell, like his biography, The Life of Clerk Maxwell, was published in 1883 by Lewis Campbell. I was just in love. So many poems that he used to write alone, to his dad, to his wife. So many reflections on his work, like back and forth with this other professor, this pope, this friend of father. But yeah, sometimes he just infuses like equations in the middle of his letters. And I'm like, I understand his letter except for this equation or except for this, what this thing is. I wonder what it actually means. And like just tracing that history of like how people come to know things. Like, and the way he was just like talking about other physicists, like fellow physicists, which for me are like, oh, ancient physicists like Clausius, like Kelvin, like Thomson, like, oh, those are just like, I just know them names and equations. But for him, they were contemporaries, and how it was just such a very social together endeavor that landed us here. It just really humanized the process as opposed to looking at it from a distance and say, oh, wow, those are the detectives out there. Like, this is part of my imagine a world statement when I was like, I imagine a world where the mysteries of the physical universe are mysteries not just for the detectives, but also for those who are not. Like, yeah, like it's easy to just look at Maxwell and Newton and Kepler and all the other scientists and Einstein and say like, those are just the detectives. And whatever the detectives declare, not just to be solutions to the mystery, but mystery itself, like, okay, we accept it. No. At least embrace the fact that it's a mystery. Like, at least allow yourself to be confused, to be like baffled by all the quandaries lying at the depth of, say, quantum physics, at the depth of astronomy, and definitely other parts of science where at least that's for everyone. Like solving them, like doing what Sherlock Holmes does, like might not be for every citizen, might not be for every public. So it's okay. Like at the end of the day, like you can't have everyone trying to solve a mystery, like, or trying to solve this particular aspect of the mystery, or there's so many aspects of reality's mystery that's buried into different parts of life. But at least the mysteries of the physical universe, like fine, like if someone wants to call themselves scientists and like want to go deeper into it, let them explore it. But it shouldn't be relegated to who we consider to be the detectives. Like, oh, so-and-so is a physicist, of course they must be right. Like, no, like, ask. Like, I think I like it when I explain the whole dark matter problem to someone and they look at me and they say like, baloney, or that's a fluke, or like, oh, come on, that's just a fudge factor. Like, come on, they're just like making stuff up, as opposed to like, oh, wow, that's so cool, Barkotel. Like, you look at dark matter, like, that's amazing. Like, yeah, you must be so smart. Like, those are not the responses that elicit much motion in the conversation. Like, I think there would be so much depth if you're like push and say, but it sounds a bit ludicrous, doesn't it? Like five times as many?
I don't think so. Like, it sounds like you don't want to be put on this pedestal of like, I am the investigator, my word is law.
You don't want to. I don't, yeah. And I want someone to push back and say like, it feels so ludicrous that 5 times as many, like, dark matter, like how are you even going to detect it? Like, and like, sometimes like I say a very confusing statement. If you ask me about a technical part of my research, I say like, oh, we want to see if in the presence of a strong magnetic field, if the presence of dark matter converts it to photons, and that's what we're trying to detect. And someone is like, wait, I thought it's you said it's dark. I thought you said it doesn't interact with the electromagnetic spectrum. So how does it change into photons? I thought photons were electromagnetic. I'm like, thank you for paying attention. As opposed to someone like listening to that and saying like, yeah, oh, that's so cool. And I understand if someone says that because like, it's easy to just give this intimidating feel of like, oh, I work on this. And someone's like, oh, wow, you must be so smart. You must be so right. If I ask a question, it's going to be a dumb question. But like, if you just imagine how the life of a first year, or second year, or third year, or fourth year, or fifth year of a grad student is just going through that I'm so dumb process of just like asking the dumbest of the dumbest questions. And then you recognize, well, if everyone is asking those questions and if these are necessary questions, then why am I calling them dumb? Like more like necessary questions, more like unavoidable questions.
Yeah, it's this like whole thing of like, you feel like an imposter, you feel like you're asking the dumb questions, but in reality, you're asking the right questions. Mm-hmm. But it's like asking the right questions doesn't take a genius. It just takes someone who is attuned to the things that are bothering them.
Yeah, just pay attention. That's what they love it. Like I remember my first year of undergrad, I asked my professor, like, oh, what do you want me to bring to this lab? Like, should I take this course? Should I do this training program, this boot camp? And he's like, hey, almost like, honey, don't worry kind of thing. Like, as long as he said 3 things, like you're passionate, you're diligent, and you're not doing that thing where you nod, even though you're not understanding what I'm saying. Like, I want you. Yeah. It's that attitude of like, I think it was a grad student mentor who said that to me. Like that's what I want, as opposed to just this pretense of like, oh, I'm prepared. I know everything. I'm ready to contribute. Like, I know you can only contribute so much, like, especially with all the other things going on in life. Like, just bring that, like, drive curiosity and just unrelenting curiosity.
Yeah, unrelenting curiosity.
Yeah.
And it seems like I see that in all aspects of your life when you're like wondering about, you know, in your journals, your emotional reality, your physical reality. It's like it's all this curiosity on every aspect of your life.
Yeah, it develops. It just makes you humble. Like, it just makes you... Okay, maybe I shouldn't say it makes you humble. I remember reading this book title of saying like humility and how I achieved it. And I'm like, So I don't want to give that aura of like,
situational irony.
Exactly.
There we go.
I think the book was intended to convey that irony. But at the end of the day, it just makes you very conscious of your thought process. And like in conversations, if you meet someone who just has a very different point of view, you're like, you know what? Let me first try to understand it. And then maybe I can go home in my journal and like try to reflect on what I thought and why I'm too stubborn to still stick with my opinion or with the way I see things.
But it's like, yeah, curiosity will help us go through disagreements instead of being like, I am right and you're wrong. It's like, tell me why you think that.
Exactly. And it's totally okay if at the end of the conversation, you're like, I'm glad you've told me why. I'm not sure if I still see why that should make me feel or think the way you do, but maybe at some point I will, because where you've come to right now is not just a function of those things that you just told me, but of the time that has passed that has kind of cemented these things in your head and your convictions in your heart. And maybe I might need some time to come to that point. Or maybe at some point we'll realize like we're not so different, like not to violate the law of non-contradiction, but at some point we might recognize that it wasn't really contradicting, or we're just approaching it from different ends. Yeah, and you recognize it in like a lot of the scientific endeavor too, where we might not even call it empathy there. It's more like, I have to use the H word again, like humility. It's like, you can only know so much from this vantage point or from the tools that you're using and from how you're approaching it. Maybe you need to use different tools. Maybe you need to, approach it differently.
Yeah, it's like all of those things at once.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've just thought a lot about during the conversation today is like, as you're reading those biographies and you're realizing these like famous scientists have all these personal lives and these deep lives, it's almost a situation here sometimes in our world today. You see a lot of like really famous people, a lot of famous scientists and everything. And sometimes it's a little frustrating. I mean, personally, like seeing them and working with them and they're so professional and they're so like academic and like you have a personal life.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like knowing it is like better for people.
That's one way I really benefited in college too, where, like I was part of Society of Physics students in undergrad. And one of the things that we pioneered that I'm so happy for was dinner with a professor, where they bring a professor, bring them to a dining hall and a bunch of students. And we just not grill them, but at least ask them about their life story and like just no questions left unasked. Maybe they could leave it unanswered, right? It's their prerogative, but at least like you're willing to pokey, like, oh, but just ask me, when did this happen? Oh, like when you moved, like, oh, what did your wife say? Like, oh, like was your husband in the area? Like, oh, like, and how did that happen? Or like, oh, like, what was it like with children? And like, oh, like what happened at that moment, that semester? Like, oh, when those student evaluations were so harsh, like, how did you feel? Like, and then, you just get to see that non-professional aspect of that more. I don't even want to call it non-professional. It's just like professional, but just infused with this personal dimension.
Yes.
Yeah.
It adds just a whole nother, like it used to be a flat character.
Yeah.
Now it's like fully developed.
Yeah.
Did you feel like after having dinner with a professor that you could approach that relationship differently?
Even email them comfortably, like, hey, professor, remember like we had this chat last time at the dining hall? I was wondering about, can you please help me? Like something like that, like when trying to decide grad school, for instance, like, at the same juncture that you mentioned last time, like, I'm experiencing the same problem. Like, can we hop on a call? You have that freedom of approaching them. They no longer feel behind these, like, mentally constructed ivory tower.
It's like that, I feel like, is a core about you that I've learned. It's like you want to remove that pedestal.
Yeah.
You want people to be like, hey, I know you and you've been through the same journey and we should talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Why the pretense? Yeah. Like, why the pretense?
Yeah, why the pretense? Why the ivory tower in the first place?
Yeah.
We're all humans. You know, we're all living and experiencing these things.
For the 2025 cohort for Knight-Hennessy, like when giving them the immersion weekend, like welcome speech, like that's something I really wanted them to take away. It's just, especially at that moment as finalists, like there's that tendency to feel that, oh, like I have to be the best of the best, king of kings, queen of queens, like to be on that aisle of the Knight-Hennessy scholar experience, or to go past the stage, or to become a Knight-Hennessy scholar entails like having this sense of perfection, to always be sitting at those peaks, to always having this like grand, beautiful, clean story. And I'm like, no, just like, fine, like go through the scholar's stories and all you read about is like peaks and achievements and like, and so is like, who graduated like summa cum laude, was Rhodes Scholar, like got like, Forbes 1 under 1 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's like, it's literally that.
Fine, it's only the peak of the peaks, but like that's the nature of these biographies. Like I remember one scholar who used to say like, we write those like biographies like to intimidate. Like it's almost the intention of like, hey, these are all the things I've done. But that's just the very incomplete story. And I really wanted those like, especially finalists, like to know that like once you cross this aisle, it doesn't make you like king of king, queen of queens, or like peak of peak. That's why I love the Knight-Hennessy, like one question that they ask in the short answer is like, please tell us of a time when you fell short of expectations. And there's just that recognition of like, we will accept you, whatever you write here, with some caveats. But like, I don't have something in mind when I say some caveats, so I just don't want to make an extreme statement, right? I don't want to be grilled by John or Dana. We're not looking for angels or saints. Like, we're looking for just normal fallen human beings who are just willing to make themselves right as much as they want to make the world a better place.
And in some ways, like these people who have seen nothing but success might not know how to handle failure.
Yeah. But I think if someone says, I've seen nothing but success, it's more like, okay, I've opened my eyes to my times of success and closed my eyes in those times of failure. It's
Which is probably bad as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you talk to these people like in academics or whatever, and it's like, they're just so good at just pushing out their successes that you almost like don't see them as a person anymore. And it's like, I'd much rather hang out with someone who doesn't have any successes, but is just so grounded and so human, as opposed to someone who's like, even like literally a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, this is what I've done. So summer 2024, there's something called the Lindau Nobel Laureate meeting. It brings together like the Olympics, like every 4 years, like the physics Nobel laureates, and then the chemistry, and then econ, and then medicine, and then physics. So it repeats like every 4 years. So it brings together those Nobel Prizes, and then we get to meet like young scientists, like undergrads, grad students, postdocs. And the intention is just like, so that you get to see this very personal component to their lives. Fine, they talk about their science, they have seminars, they have lectures where they tell you about what they did, but like there's this intention of like, you get to see their stories and you just see that they're normal human beings. You can, don't touch them, but you can technically touch them and feel that they're humans just like you.
Are you human?
Exactly.
You are human.
I think those experiences really transform my time too. Like, again, I come to the US and I'm like, I think of institutions and I'm like, all those professors, like, they must be like, they have the swankiest mind on the planet, like just so deep and so untouchable. But it's like, even they don't want you really to feel that way. Like the Nobel laureates, like I went to that summer meeting and I'm like, oh wow, like I wonder what they're going to be like. But in the end, I didn't even want to take pictures, ask them like for selfies or whatever. But on the one hand, I felt they've gotten that so much that it would just make them feel like almost objectified. But on the other hand, if I get this one-on-one opportunity with this man, like after I take a selfie, I would feel satisfied and I'd want to leave. But if I start asking a question, he'd start saying more, she'd start saying more. And I want to keep that conversation going. Because I noticed like in the first 1 or 2 Nobel laureate, I remember like I took a selfie with them and I just didn't want to ask them any more questions. And I just reflected, like at night, I just zoomed in on the picture, zoomed in, zoomed out. I'm like, whoa, I got a picture with like Jared Tooft. Like this is so cool. And I'm like, but I didn't ask him anything. And that was early in the conference. And later on, I was just, you know what? I'll just let other people take their pictures and then I'll just ask my questions.
Yeah, because you started out feeling like you were extracting something.
Exactly. But at some point, like even when others were asking, I'm like, I'll just be comfortable with their questions and with the answers that they get to their questions. I don't even have to ask because I'm here to like get this personal dimension to it.
Absolutely. So we're running out on the hour. But before we finish here, this amazing conversation that we've had, there's just a few things that we typically like to talk about in this podcast, especially because a lot of the audience here are listening and they want to apply to Stanford and they might want to apply to become a Knight-Hennessy scholar. And us too, we're both Knight-Hennessy scholars. And so I'd be very curious to hear about if you had any advice for people trying to apply for Stanford or Knight-Hennessy or anything like that who might not know if they're the best fit or anything like that.
With some disclaimers, right? I don't want to be agnostic to the fact that it's growing to be a very tricky application season, like the application economy, especially in a lot of departments. Whatever I say from that, like, I don't want it to be agnostic to that. Like, I'll use disclaimers. Sometimes you want to say something, but it feels almost too cliche that like it's going to land on deaf ears, but I'm just going to say it nonetheless. Like the process really matters a lot more than the outcome. And if the only intention at the end of the day is like, I want to maximize the outcome, and therefore compromise the process, like it becomes almost less worth it. And by this, I mean, if as you're writing the connect the dots essay, if while you're writing like your personal statement and trying to reflect on your research, like it becomes a lot less of you pausing and really thinking about what you did over research over the past year or 3 years, or as you reflect on your connect the dots essay, and you're focusing instead more on, oh, are the admissions officers going to like this more? Is this going to sound fancy? Is this like, and then you look at like scholar profiles or you talk to scholars and like, oh, is my story similar to them? And the focus suddenly becomes a lot more on the outcome, and like you're just not quite reflecting on your life. You're not quite reflecting on the dots or your research experience or how you're really a great fit for this department that you're trying to apply for. You'll lose a lot of this very rare season because it's not a lot of times where you actually get almost force yourself or be forced to reflect on your life in this way, or at least the past 3 years or so this way. Again, the outcome matters, right? You do want to get into, if you're applying to Stanford, if you're applying to KH, and yeah, I don't want to negate like or lie of the fact that how much I tried to optimize for that, as much as I also wanted to optimize for the process. But just don't forget the process. Like, and the more emotionally demanding it is, the better. Like,
Yes.
Unfortunately, the better. Like, if it's very simple, just like write the story, it's like maybe dig a little deeper.
Yes. Like if it's easy, you're not trying hard enough.
If there's a story that you default to, like, oh, tell me about yourself. Like, if there's an immediate story that you default to, like, maybe find a new default, or maybe let that not be your default. Maybe let it just be like, let loose certain chains that you have constructed that you, okay, this territory, I can't even talk about it. And just like, maybe it might be okay to talk about that. Like maybe not, right? But maybe it might be okay to talk about those things you never default to. And yeah, I think the process really matters. The earlier, the better. But I know people who like one of my friends just learned about the deadline, like about Knight-Hennessy, like 2 weeks before the deadline and still got it, right? So that's possible. If you start early, it's really helpful, like to start reflecting on the whole process. And then my second point would be something on the flip side. It doesn't really matter how early you start. Like I started somewhat early, but I submitted like the night or the day before. It's like this almost obsession with every detail and like trying to make sure it's all good. Like it will last all the way through October if you let it. So at some point, like you have to like almost construct an artificial deadline in your mind and say like, I'm not going to submit this in October. Like it has to be in September, or it has to be like 5 days before, 3 days before. Like if you just let loose the deadline to the literal deadline, then you might chase it all the way to the end. And it compromised some aspects of my life, sleep, in my final year of college. So yeah, start early, but know that starting early doesn't mean finishing early. You could also finish very late.
Yeah, that's a core part of writing. It's like you write till a deadline, you'll never feel like you're going to be done writing. And that's just how it is. I think it's amazing advice, and also it's a lot less cliche than you think, because when people think about an application, they think about very much not journey. They think about destination, because it's literally you're applying to be something. But it's so true that it's like as you're writing, as you're excavating these parts of yourselves, you will discover parts of you that you didn't know existed, and to default or to avoid things that you default to normally is that opportunity to go beyond and to understand a part of you that you even didn't know.
Exactly. If you're a senior, you only have one senior year of college, so don't miss out on that. Yeah. I don't know how else to add, like what caveat to add to this apart from saying like, I know you're busy, blah, blah, but there's just only one senior year. Some people are like 5 years out of college, deep in work. And for that, ask the more mature, less, this is all coming from a young boy who's still 23. So what do I know?
So important to keep living, as we've heard a lot in your story. This has been such an amazing hour with you, and I've learned so much about your journey and your very wide degree of curiosities and your very amazing and unique way of seeing the science and the emotion and writing and everything like that. So it's been my pleasure to talk to you, and this has been Imagine a World. I'll see you next episode.
It's been my deepest joy talking with you, Matt.
Likewise. All right. And we're out of here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Imagine the World, where we hear from inspiring members of the KHS community who are making significant contributions in their respective fields, challenging the status quo and pushing the boundaries of what is possible as they imagine the world they want to see.
This podcast is sponsored by Knight-Hennessy Scholars at Stanford University, a multidisciplinary, multicultural graduate fellowship program providing scholars with financial support to pursue graduate studies at Stanford while helping equip them to be visionary, courageous, and collaborative leaders who address complex challenges facing the world. Follow us on social media at Knight-Hennessy and visit our website at kh.stanford.edu to learn more about the program and our community.